In the first quarter of 2016, Berkshire Hathaway purchased 9.8 million shares of Apple for the first time at around $109 a share. The next quarter, Buffett revealed his investment to the world, and by then it had already dropped in value from $1.1 billion to around $888 million. He had already lost a smidge over $220 million. In April 2016, legendary investor Carl Icahn announced he had sold all of his 45 million Apple shares at the end of the previous year. So what was Buffett thinking? The media could smell blood. Was an investment legend starting to falter and resorting to tech investing to save himself? What was the angle here? Yet fast forward to today, and you could snarkily say that on a dollar amount returned, Buffett's big bet on Apple has made him the greatest tech investor of all time. But there may be a grain of truth to this initial outlandish statement. Since Berkshire's initial investment, Apple's value has more than tripled from $700 billion to $2.4 trillion. Berkshire's stake in the tech giant is now worth around $120 billion for an unrealized gain of over $80 billion. So this video is a case study into Berkshire's big Apple bet and how Buffett and his new Berkshire buddies were able to do it. Buffett's Apple investment is often overshadowed by the time-tested and easily understandable investment in Coca-Cola back in the 80s. What's so special about this beverage bet? Buffett began buying shares of Coke through Berkshire Hathaway in 1988 and now owns more than 400 million shares, which accounts for just under 10% of the entire beverage giant and is their largest shareholder today. So why is Buffett's investment in Coca-Cola so well known and well loved? Because it's easy to understand. Coke possessed an incredibly strong brand, paired with intelligent asset allocation, combined with a fair valuation and Buffett's long-term time horizon. A solid recipe for success. It's a story every value investor knows closely and loves to draw upon when claiming their own investments are fairly valued and have a strong moat like Coke. Yet Buffett's greatest, yet most underrated investment would be in a sector he was famously out of touch with and lacking interest in: technology. Buffett is not a tech nerd. I can't stress this enough. His work office has a landline phone, no computer, and throughout his entire life of 92 years on this planet, he's apparently only sent one solitary email to Jeff Rakes of Microsoft. In his 1997 letter to shareholders on the topic of low enthusiasm from shareholders about Berkshire's fancy new website, Warren remarked, "Being a lifelong sufferer from technophobia, I can emphasize with this group." So I think it should be clear from this point that investing in Apple was not a Warren Buffett-driven endeavor. And to understand the Apple investment from Berkshire, you need to understand a couple of Warren's understudies. So let me introduce Todd Combs and Ted Weschler. Todd Combs is a former hedge fund manager who joined Berkshire on the back of cold calling Warren's right-hand man, Charlie Munger, and eventually met Charlie for breakfast and chatted for hours before being introduced to Buffett, and that's where they also hit it off. During these extended conversations, Buffett began talking about his plan to hire a money manager. Ted Combs, who even admits that this is true, started thinking about another person that he could recommend, before Buffett eventually dropped, "Well, I think we're kind of thinking of you," thus cementing the unlikely fairy tale career journey for Ted Combs. Ted Weschler is also a former hedge fund manager, now managing money at Berkshire, and arrived in a similarly strange way. Weschler first met Buffett over dinner, a rather expensive one at that. Through a charity auction, Weschler made the winning bid for a bite with Buffett. I was expecting a stiff hour or so meeting, and it ended up being this long visit at the office and a terrific dinner. Having not quite satisfied his hunger, the following year the madman did it again, bidding and winning on a second meeting. All up, these two meals cost Weschler more than $5 million US. After peppering his new friend Warren with questions, he got one of his own back. Would he be interested in coming to work for Berkshire? And in a bold decision against the Oracle of Omaha, Weschler initially rejected Warren's offer to work at Berkshire, electing to stay in Charlottesville due to family and work. But 3 years later, he sent a careful letter mentioning that he was interested in that prior offer and received a response that Warren would be happy to have him and that he could manage money from the moon as far as Warren was concerned. So that is the tale of how Todd and Ted became assets of Berkshire and Buffett. Buffett speaks of both highly. They're both absolutely terrific. They are assets of Berkshire. And between Ted and Todd at the end of 2021, they were managing $34 billion of Berkshire's investments between them. But where does the interest in an Apple investment begin? Getting Buffett on board with the Apple investment was in part thanks to Combs. The story goes that Combs would often visit Buffett's house on many a Saturday to talk, and there was a litmus test that they would frequently use. Warren would ask, how many names in the S&P are going to be 15 times earnings in the next 12 months? How many are going to earn more in 5 years using a 90% confidence interval? And how many will compound at 7% using a 50% confidence interval? In this exercise, you are solving for cyclicality, compounding, and the initial price of an investment. Combs would say that this rubric was used to find Apple since at the same time, the same 3 to 5 names kept popping up. And the business case for Apple was explained by Ted Weschler in an October 2016 interview with the German business magazine. Ted mentions that he considers the iPhone to be more effective than Coca-Cola at creating a loyal customer base, and that once people bought an iPhone, they seldom switched because they didn't want to have to learn a new operating system. Once you are fully invested in the app ecosystem and have got your thousands of photographs up in the cloud, and you are used to the keystrokes and functionality and where everything is, you become a sticky customer. Weschler had recognized that Tim Apple was taking the ecosystem that Jobs had created and was wringing more revenue out of it, turning the iPhone into a subscription-based business that would generate cash for years to come. But there comes a time to take the leap, put your money where your mouth is, and invest in your thesis. But it's unknown exactly whether it was Combs or Weschler who initiated Berkshire's Apple investment, which was initially 9.8 million shares totaling over $1 billion. But by the end of 2018, this initial $1 billion bet by Berkshire had turned into 255 million shares at a cost of over $35 billion. So it's fair to say that Buffett had bought into Ted and Todd's vision and valuation of Apple. Buffett at the time said, Apple has an extraordinary consumer franchise. I see how strong that ecosystem is, to an extraordinary degree. You are very, very, very locked in, at least psychologically and mentally, to the product you are using. iPhone is a very sticky product. No doubt, able to see how strong their ecosystem was thanks to 2 very handy proteges. By 2018, Berkshire's Apple position was its second biggest public holding, only behind Wells Fargo, which has been since sold off. And there were no other tech companies in Berkshire Hathaway's top 15 holdings by value at the time. Today, Berkshire's Apple investment now accounts for over 40% of their total public portfolio. At the end of 2021, only Berkshire's insurance division was a larger portion of their overall business. But what are the actual eye-watering monetary returns on this Apple investment, I hear you ask? Overall, Apple's value as a company has more than tripled from $700 billion to $2.4 trillion, and Berkshire's stake in this giant is now worth over $120 billion for an unrealized gain of over $80 billion. So Berkshire's Apple investment, whilst not as crazy when compared to the VC investments like Nasdaq's $32 million in Tencent in 2001, or Masayoshi Son's $20 million investment into Alibaba, it does hold a candle in terms of total dollars returned and the fact that it was already such a large public company. So for an 86-year-old technophobe at the time, who most would have written off as having their best years behind them, Buffett has arguably saved his best for last with this Apple investment. Berkshire's Coca-Cola investment story has always been the stuff of legends, but that investment parable has been surpassed. Bill Smead, CIO at Smead Capital Management, said that Buffett is having his Coca-Cola moment on Apple, which, mind you, this is being done on a much larger dollar scale. It's probably fair to say that Buffett's Apple investment is the greatest public market tech investment ever made. So just as Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle wisely said, "The future is now, old man," and Buffett's big Apple bet has shown that.